Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well today and you are ready for the program. Because today on the show we have the one, the only Mr. Ralph Bond. He is our science and technology trends correspondent, where if you're not quite sure what that means, well, just what it sounds like. We have stories ranging from science, technology, space, medical research, everything. Don't worry, Ralph's going to really explain this, but you're in for a treat. So with that being said, computeramerica.com, I should probably mention that. That's where you'll find everything, including the show notes. I'm looking at them right now. And ladies and gentlemen, it will have links and, some of the late talking points, but mainly it's going to be the entire story with YouTube videos. If you want to find out more, highly encourage you to check that out. We'll also have a link to Ralph's site, where if you want to find more of Ralph and myself, then hey, check out his website. And I saw just recently he added places to find all the podcasts that are, of course, centric with us. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and, also social media links, giveaway contests, product reviews, articles, everything that we do here at Computer America, computeramerica.com. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump right into it with Ralph. So if you have not heard of Ralph, well, he is a longtime Computer America contributor, and of course, he's had stints at many different companies, most recently with Autodesk, and now he is, of course, our science and technology trends correspondent. So, Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
I can do a great intro because, again, what we're going to talk about today, folks, first and foremost, we're going to leave you feeling good. You're going to feel uplifted with positive science and technology trends news. So that's number one. And as Ben alluded to, I will have stories that are robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, all across the board. Everything's eligible for us to cover. And what Ben and I do is we take the show notes, we give you the highlights. And as Ben alluded to, come out to computeramerica.com because you want to get the show notes. If you want to dive deeper, we'll have links to videos, pictures, the highlight points. But again, there's so much science and technology behind every one of these stories that you can dive deeper into if you so desire. So we've got a good set of shows or stories for you today in today's show, starting off with a really cool one from NASA.
Yeah, space is going to play a key role in today's show. So this is all, it's always a lot of fun. And, I got to say, Ralph, politics aside, there has been a lot of appreciation for NASA. Their budget has been increasing. Obviously, China has been investing in their space program, and with aspirations not just to go back to the moon, but to actually, set up some sort of permanent residence on the moon. NASA has a lot of I kind of see them off as the people that spin plates on poles. They have a lot of plates going right now, and and the moon is not that's not the only thing they're focusing on. And the next couple of stories are really going to highlight that. So yeah, like you said, story number one.
Yeah, you make a very good point about NASA having many plates in the air. They're spinning all at once, and wonderfully so, I might say. Anyway, so here we go. Headline here is NASA unveils interior of simulation Mars habitat for future missions. And I got this from extremetech.com, fun website, a story by Adrianna 9. And we've got some pictures in the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast again, please come out and get those show notes. You can see what we're talking about. It's a lot of fun. So here we go. This summer, 4 volunteers will move into NASA's Mars Dune Alpha, which is a 3D printed structure and massive sandbox comprising a simulated Mars habitat. And the Mars Dune Alpha will host an experimental program called Crew Health and Performance Exploration analog, or of course the acronym CHAPIA for short. I'm not sure about the analog part. Crew health, I get that. Performance exploration, okay. Analog, I'd love to have someone at NASA explain what the analog part means. But anyway, here we go more. The volunteers will live in the Mars Dune Alpha for 1 year at a time, 1 year, conducting farming, geology, and even medical experiments to help NASA determine the viability of long-term life on Mars, meaning human occupation of Mars. On April the 11th, so not long ago here, NASA showed off the 1,700 square foot structure, which was 3D printed using something called lavacrete. And lavacrete's a proprietary material created by the material science team at a large-scale 3D printer maker by the name of Icon. And Mars Dune Alpha's airlock opens to 4 private quarters, a full bathroom, several workstations, a medical station, a communal lounge, and a small vertical farm. If you're not familiar with vertical farms, it's where you trellis up and grow food items so vertically. The vertical farm will allow the volunteers to grow ready-to-eat produce like tomatoes and lettuce, and the lounge, complete with a TV, of course, some board games, and a couple of video game consoles. Very important. Are they Xbox or are they, Sony? Which brand are they? They didn't say. And that will provide for socialization, relaxation, and food prep. And this is interesting too. Outside the airlock lies the habitat's 1,200 square foot sandbox, which contains a couple of treadmills and a whole lot of red sand. And then in imitation spacesuits, the volunteers will pair the treadmills with virtual reality kits to simulate longer traverses on Mars called Mars walks. So they'll do simulated Mars walkabouts. And during each Mars walk, the volunteers will identify rocks of interest, evaluate potential base sites, and conduct other reconnaissance exercises. So this is a VR kind of simulation combined with actual props and so forth. Pretty cool concept.
Right.
And this is also interesting, Ben. Every little part of the volunteers' lives will be analyzed for future Mars missions. For example, NASA will assess the volunteers' trash to develop products that can be reused in space. Talk about recycling. Pretty interesting there. And this is also fun. And any communication with the outside world will occur with a 22-minute delay, as it would if you were on the red planet. So if I were to give you a phone call, Ben, from Mars, I would say, "Hi, Ben, how you doing?" And I'd have to wait for 22 minutes.
Yeah, you can imagine that those video game consoles aren't exactly hooked up to the internet.
No Fortnite. And to measure the toll that life on Mars takes on the bodies and minds of the 4 volunteers, the volunteers will provide regular blood tests and complete periodic psychological surveys. I'd pay money to see that one. That'd be pretty interesting. And then over the next 3 years, so it's a 3-year long project with 1 year commitment per yearly cycle by the simulated astronauts. So over the next 3 years, NASA's Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog Experiment will combine the insights gleaned from these simulations with Artemis data. Now, remember, Artemis is, and you were talking about moon occupation, that's our NASA's program for moon mission to occupy. So they're going to take the learnings and the data gathered from this Mars simulation project and compare it to what the Artemis team are doing in the same vein to kind of help determine how humans can work, sleep, exercise, socialize, and otherwise exist on Mars. So what I love about this story, what we do, Ben, is this is a story I didn't hear the mainstream press cover. I didn't see this on the nightly news. And yet I think it's so interesting and fun and curious. And as folks, this is an example of the kind of positive stuff that we want to share with you that you're not going to find in many other outlets. So good story. Check it out.
And I like that you included a second link in there to NASA's website that includes more about the 3D printing aspect of all this.
Yes. Yeah.
These are stories that kind of come up here, and we've seen 3D printing housing come up with either, really innovative modern houses that, can really do a lot, or
Right.
maybe as like a low cost, affordable, smaller houses in places that don't have access to a lot of infrastructure. Being able to do it on Mars, and honestly, the pictures of the residents, I know that, it's just out there in Colorado or wherever, or Arizona, wherever this habitat is, the simulation is. Ralph, honestly, at first glance, and I'm sure that a lot of people kind of would share this, when you first look at it and you don't really focus on it, it looks like wood with like shiplap. It looks very cottage-like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It very accommodating, I guess. It's not, sterile like a laboratory that you're going to be living in. It looks very cozy, surprisingly, for a habitat that might be on Mars one day.
Yeah, and the picture of the sandbox where the treadmills are and stuff, and where they do their simulated walkabouts, it just blows my mind. It's pretty clever stuff, and I think it's smart, obviously, to kind of test drive how do human beings fare up 1 year commitment. Imagine saying, "Okay, NASA, sure, I'll do this for a year." Wow.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't turn into Thunderdome, it should go really, really well. I'm curious to see all the data, because I'm sure, like so much, talking about it, thinking about it only gets you so far. Doing it and actually evaluating means so much more. So good luck to anyone that has to subject themselves to that. I'm glad that I get to not do that, but it's still very exciting for what the next steps are. So very, very cool. Story number one. Story number two, and this is back down to earth before we go. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, story number three is just so much fun. So, normally I like to tease one at the beginning of the show. Story number three is kind of my big story for the show. But story number two is exciting for a different way, in that we get to continue to habitate Earth instead of just going and just buggering off to Mars. Story number two, Ralph, we've heard of a couple of different technologies, but always exciting to hear new technology tackling the same big issue.
Yeah, and a little preface before I give the headline here. Ben, you and I, over the past, couple of years, periodically we have stories about people working on the idea of extracting carbon dioxide, CO2, from the ocean. Over the past couple of years, it's been very interesting for me, at least personally, to learn about how the Earth's oceans absorb CO2 and how climate change is impacting them. And then this incredible international effort ongoing every day to figure out how can we extract CO2 from the ocean and so on and so forth. This fits that category. So it's not the first time we've ever talked about somebody trying to do this, but this is kind of a latest twist on it. Okay, so here's the headline. Big sponge. New tech aims to extract CO2 from the Earth's oceans to tackle global warming. And this comes from phys, P-H-Y-S for physics.org. Great website. The author here is Romain Fonsegrives. I hope I'm not butchering that name too badly. Great pictures in the show notes, folks. So here we go. Floating in the port of Los Angeles, a strange-looking barge covered with pipes and tanks contains a concept that scientists hope to make waves, a new way to use the ocean as a vast carbon dioxide sponge to tackle global warming. It's a little different than actually that, but we'll find out in just a moment. Scientists from the University of California, Los Angeles have been working for 2 years on a project called Sea Change. In this case, it's SEA, and then the word change run together. Sea Change is the name of the project. An ambitious project that could one day boost the amount of CO2, a major greenhouse gas, of course, that can be absorbed by our seas. Their goal is to use the ocean as a big sponge. According to Gaurav Sant, S-A-N-T is the last name, director of the university's Institute for Carbon Management. The oceans, of course, covering most of the Earth, are already the planet's main carbon sinks, acting as a critical buffer in the climate crisis. They absorb a quarter of all CO2 emissions, as well as 90% of the warming that has occurred in the recent decades due to increasing greenhouse gases. That was a data point, Ben, that really struck me. I knew about the absorption of CO2, but the bit about 90% of the warming is absorbed into our oceans so far. Wow. I mean, that just blew my mind. And I have to segue here just for a moment. Folks, I live in the Portland, Oregon area. If you do not believe in climate change, look at Portland, Oregon's weather in the month of April, which is coming to a conclusion. We've had snow in the month of April, and today it's predicted. You get this, and today it's predicted, to be close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. What?
Yeah,
that would be be considered very warm, even by our summer standards. So something's going on. Okay. Off my local weather soapbox.
It's and of course, extreme weather I think has been happening all over the country. But of course, it's not just the 1 year or the 1 day or the 1 month. This is definitely a trend. So what was crazy last year might be normal the next year. So.
Yeah, for sure. So true. So again, going back to our oceans, and so the oceans are feeling the strain of that absorption of warmth and, of course, CO2. And the ocean is acidifying. I think we all know that. And, of course, we've all heard so often about the ocean temperatures rising and reducing. And by the way, the acidification and the rising temperatures of our Earth's oceans, that's reducing their ability to absorb CO2. Ding, ding, ding. That's a problem. It's sort of like the bucket's getting full and it's starting to overflow. All right. Yep. So the UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles team wants to increase the ability of the world's oceans to absorb CO2 by using an electrochemical process to remove vast quantities of CO2 already in seawater. And they say it's rather like wringing out a sponge to help cover its absorptive power. That's the whole big sponge nickname for the project. So here's what they did, Ben. Engineers built a floating mini factory on a 100-foot or 30-meter long boat, which pumps in seawater and subjects it to an electrical charge. Chemical reactions triggered by electrolysis convert CO2 dissolved in the seawater into a fine white powder containing calcium carbonate, the compound found in chalk, limestone, and oyster or mussel shells. And time out for a second here. This is not the first time scientists have transformed CO2 in ocean water into calcium carbonate. So we're not trying to say this is the first time ever, but these guys have got a really good system, and we'll find out more. Oh, a quick reminder. Electrolysis, we're not talking about this as it applies to cosmetics. Okay, there's that. Well, no, we're talking electrolysis in this application is chemical decomposition produced by passing an electric current through a liquid or solution containing ions. So that's what we're talking about here. So the powder that results from the electrolysis of the seawater can be discarded back into the ocean, where it remains in solid form, thereby storing CO2 very durably over tens of thousands of years. And when I first read that, I thought, well, okay, that's kind of good, but is that sort of like littering the ocean now with this solid carbonate stuff? Well, anyway, meanwhile, the pumped water without CO2, now it's been cleansed, as it were, of the CO2, returns back into the sea, ready to absorb more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Now, to my concerns, the UCLA team says they're confident the process will not damage the marine environment, although this will require further testing to confirm. Yeah, well, I think so. But still, it's a net positive. A potential, and you're going to love this, Ben, a potential additional benefit of the technology they've created is that it creates hydrogen as a byproduct. So we all know that as the so-called green revolution progresses, hydrogen gas could be widely used as a power to power clean cars, trucks, and planes in the future. So it has a byproduct of hydrogen. And once again, extracting CO2 from ocean water and creating a byproduct of hydrogen is not necessarily the first time this has happened. But again, these guys, if you look at the pictures of this barge they've created, and their whole thing is they think they can treat vast quantities of seawater with a fleet of these barges all over the world. So it's, interesting idea. It's different. And
it seems like a crazy idea, but at the same time, ever since the, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever it was, we've had nuclear submarines just, kind of trolling around doing their thing. Imagine nuclear ships that could, kind of do this instead of, be ready for war, which, all that aside. They could just be pumping and cleaning and filtering and doing all this kind of thing with the CO2. Ralph, to your concern about, putting it back in the ocean as a form of like a solid powder, I kind of think of, I kind of imagine if you did this on a large enough scale, and like it would have to be a really, really massive scale, but also we need a massive scale to solve this problem.
Well, sure.
I kind of think of it like a big old layer of dust, like in your house, like a little layer of dust would kind of form on everything. But also, light doesn't really penetrate further than 20, 30, 40 feet. So if you're worried about, kind of sunlight not being able to get to where it needs to go, that does seem to be a problem. I am curious what that thin layer of dust might do to everything else. Who knows? I mean, they're going to have to look into that, but this is a very, very cool one where it's all self-contained and it has that nice added benefit of, hey, creating a byproduct that is also usable and also helping with alternative fuel sources. So this is like a this is like a win-win. I guess all you need is scale, money, time, and technology, and then you got it going.
Yeah, and you made a great point about, say, nuclear subs running around and so forth. Well, wait a minute. Couldn't these barges, perhaps, if you had this total cycle, so your a byproduct is hydrogen, maybe they on these ships, if they were larger, you could have the processing of the hydrogen to be a fuel to drive these ships. So it's like this, constantly,
and hey, who knows? Maybe if you got the whole thing automated, you kind of get the ships to kind of drive themselves. You wouldn't even need people on there, and it could all happen by itself. Very, very automated. And Ralph, like, this is it seems like such a monumental task, and that's what I've heard on the news, and especially with what's happening, the flooding in Mississippi. It's awful. The images of people being forced out of places or having to deal with more and more extreme weather, it's sad to see what's happening, but at the same time, it's exciting for the technology to come along, Ralph. And it's like, that we can solve these problems. There are, obviously these are experimental, but they have a working prototype. They're proving that it can work on a much smaller scale. If you had the initiative, and I think, group survival is a pretty great motivator. It's possible, Ralph. And that's the hopeful bit to me. It's like, this is all possible. We just need to do it.
Yeah. Your point is so well made. We have the technology. Do we have the will? Yeah, and that's so key.
And more pressure is going to be applied to us until we determine, maybe we should get around to this. So I'm personally not worried too much, obviously I'm worried about climate change and all that kind of thing. But I also know there's going to be a solution, and stories like these definitely give me hope. So story number 3, which is just for the concept image, and I know it's just an artist rendition, but we've, Ralph, on the show before, we have talked about these snake-like robots that are that are able to traverse and get into difficult environments and get into like pipes and stuff and sewers and rescue operations. I think there was a snake-like robot that promised to get into like rubble of a building. We've seen these robots talked about in a number of ways, even in the ocean. We even saw an ocean robot that did this. Never have we heard one that goes into space. So that's what caught my attention.
Yes, this is a really fun story. Got it from Talker News on MSN. And the headline here, scientists are planning to send a robot snake to search for life on a small icy moon of Saturn. So we're back in space here, and this is the artist illustration is very dramatic and very fun. But I have to say, when you see the video of this robot, and folks who are listening to us via the podcast outlets, again, please come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes, get the link, go out and see these videos of this remarkable prototype snake-like robot. It's the coolest snake robot I've seen so far. So here we go. The Exobiology Extant Life Surveyor, and of course it has to become an acronym, EELS, no pun intended, EELS robot system is being developed at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, good old JPL. Now, the snake-like elongated robot will have the ability to slither along otherworldly terrains thanks to its spinning wheels along its body. And you're showing the video right now. It is such it's such a clever design. So the target of this robot, its purpose, and again, we'll talk about how many other possibilities this thing could be used for in space and here on Earth. But its target, the reason it's being created, is to explore the vent systems on a small icy moon of Saturn called Enceladus. And data from NASA's Enceladus. Yeah. I tried to figure out how to say that, and I even went out to how do you pronounce it.
Not one of the. It's not as easy as like Titan, but it
doesn't roll off your tongue,
right?
So anyway, data from NASA's Cassini spacecraft. By the way, that's a spacecraft probe sent to study the planet Saturn and its system, including its rings and natural satellites. So data from the Cassini spacecraft indicates that Enceladus, I hope I'm saying that right, has a liquid ocean under its icy crust. So initial data says a liquid ocean under its icy crust. The plumes, and this is shown in the artist illustration, the plumes erupting from its surface are conduits directly to liquid water, potentially making this the easiest path to habitable liquid ocean. In other words, this would be a pathway to get to that liquid ocean to see if there's any life forms down there. That's what's going on. So unlike rover vehicles we typically think of, the EELS snake robot would be able to investigate scenarios like this by crawling down crevices and swimming through water. So this thing can swim also. Not only can rotate these discs around its body to slither and move, and it's got the faceted body so it can undulate and all that good stuff, but it can swim. The system uses a first-of-a-kind rotating propulsion units. We've been alluding to that, and that's the breakthrough here. First-of-a-kind rotating propulsion units that act as tracks, gripping mechanisms, and propeller units underwater, enabling the robot to access a plume vent, exit, and follow it to its ocean source. Wow. So project manager Dr. Martin Robinson says the goal is a platform that could explore anywhere, even venturing down lava tubes on the moon. So there's other space uses for this. The adaptability of the system opens other destinations, such as Martian polar caps and descending crevices in ice sheets on Earth. So there could be Earth applications for this. Right now, today, the tests so far have been conducted in Canada's Athabasca, and I hope I'm saying that right, Athabasca Glacier and Mount Meager volcanoes. So this is another example of trends. This is research that's going on. They're testing it right now on Earth, and hopefully someday they're going to deploy this thing out to Saturn on this moon, orbiting Saturn, and away we go. We'll see if we find life forms in that ocean on that moon of Saturn.
Yeah, it's always fun to think about the fact that, you know, as advanced as we think we are with robotics and science and technology, that sometimes just looking back at nature and saying, how does nature move things? And really, you know, if you look at this, you think snake, eel, you know, maybe certain types of worms, like a lot of those were the inspiration. And looking back at nature, I mean, it's had millions and millions and millions and millions of years to really perfect great modes of locomotion. And hey, this robot definitely takes inspiration and is very, very cool. Besides, that concept art alone looks like it should be on like a science fiction novel, but I know, you know, they have a working prototype. They have it right.
They do.
Let's see. Not this one, but if you're watching the video portion, that one right there.
Yeah, so, it's great. Those videos are fun, folks. And again, podcast listeners, please come and get those show notes at computeramerica.com. Get the link and see the video. It's well worth your effort.
For sure. We'll include this. So that's story number 3. Story number 4, though, and as you always say, you like to end with something science and, you know, kind of uplifting, because let's face it, when it comes to medical, you know, kind of technology, you know, humans are very basic. It's get everything together, make sure it's clean, and eventually the body will do what the body naturally does, and we're just trying to help it along. Story number 4 really highlights that, but, you know, time is of the essence, I guess, when it comes to surgery and medical response and that kind of thing. And story number 4 is a little hopeful that maybe this could save people's lives. So
that's right. That's right. So frequently, not always, folks, we end the segment, as we will today, with an uplifting medical science trend story, discoveries and breakthroughs and so forth. And so this fits that category. Headline here is: scientists create gelatin-based surgical sealant for rapid sealing inside the body. Got this from I love this website, medgadget.com. And I've done many stories from this guy. Conn, Hastings is the name of the author. Mm-hmm. Great story. So here we go. To fully appreciate this news, the author of the article set the stage with the following background. So I want to give you this background. So that way, this way you can appreciate what we're talking about in terms of a breakthrough. So sealing incisions within the body can be challenging. The slippery surfaces of our internal tissues are not amenable to ease of handling and also repel many sealants that work in more hospital conditions. So many of our tissues move constantly. Great example, our lungs, making it difficult to seal incisions to accommodate this movement while also maintaining a seal. And traditional sutures and staples, which we're all very familiar with, can take time to insert properly and can cause blood loss. And if you ever watch some of these medical drama TV shows like, the one about Chicago Med or whatever,
yeah.
They're in surgery and they're trying to suture up something that's moving and wiggling like a heart, whatever. It takes incredible skill. So to overcome these issues, researchers have been developing new surgical sealants that can rapidly seal incisions within the body, even challenging tissues such as the heart or lungs. As these substances must be biodegradable and biocompatible, many such technologies rely on naturally occurring materials such as gelatin, which derives from animal collagen. Time out, little reminder. Collagen is a protein in the body. Different types of collagen are in many body parts, including your hair, skin, nails, bones, ligaments, tendons, cartilage, blood vessels, and intestines.
Yeah.
Okay. So with all of that setup said, here's the big drum roll, please, news. Researchers at the Terasaki Institute for Biomedical Innovation in Los Angeles have developed a new gelatin-based surgical sealant that makes a key advancement as it rapidly seals wounds, etc. The sealant is thermoresponsive, meaning that it will rapidly form a semi-solid bolus, that's B-O-L-U-S, when it reaches body temperature. Ding, ding, timeout. Bolus. What's that? I had to look it up. A bolus is a single dose of a drug or other substance given over a short period of time. That's what medical people mean when they say a bolus. So it's a pretty wide-ranging term that covers a lot of territory. It's usually given by infusion or injection into the blood vessel. It can also be given by mouth. So that's a very generic definition of bolus. In this case, what we're talking about is a sealant that's thermoresponsive, meaning it will rapidly form a semi-solid bolus dose, if you want to call it, or application when it reaches body temperature. How clever. So this thing goes into your body. When it warms up to your body temperature, it does its job.
Right. So it doesn't need like layers, or you don't need like like 5 different applications of the sealant to work. It just works once and you're done.
Yeah. And the new gelatin-based surgical sealant is also bioadhesive, adhering to slippery, wet surfaces in the body with relative ease. That's the big excitement here of this breakthrough. The researchers achieved this. Oh, you're going to love this part. This relates to this right here. See my coffee mug? Okay, here we go. With that tease, here's the part that just made me laugh. I love this. The researchers achieved this by incorporating caffeic acid, a substance that is naturally found in coffee and olive oil. So they use this caffeic acid, again, from coffee and olive oil, and they made that part of the gelatin gel, which helped to increase the adhesive strength of the formulation. Wow. Okay.
Someone was having a cup of coffee and they were looking at all the little coffee remnants on the side of the cup and they're like, I wonder.
Yeah, I just that part I thought was great. So anyway, to wrap things up here, so far, the sealant has demonstrated impressive effectiveness, including being able to seal a hole in lungs that are actively being inflated. In other words, the patient's breathing, or well, maybe it's an animal they did this on, but nonetheless, the lungs are moving, they're slippery, they're wet, and this sealant was able to work in that condition. So great for surgical purposes and so forth. How wonderful. Great uplifting ending.
I feel like if there was any organ that really would test the strength of this bond and just how effective it would be the lungs, because they inflate so much. Hopefully your liver doesn't inflate as much as your lungs, for instance. So be able to kind of seal up little holes in the heart and stuff like that.
Yeah, the heart.
Very very interesting stuff. And I guess the biodegradable part is probably the best part, because Ralph, I know that you had chest surgery and heart surgery and stuff like that.
Open heart.
They really don't like going back in there. Once they kind of split you open once, they don't like going back in there. So the fact that they can leave it in there, leave you closed up and leave you, hopefully recovering all the better, faster and easier. This is a very, very uplifting story. So I'm glad that you found it. And you're right, naturally derived. So hopefully we have a chance of seeing this, because sometimes we talk about stories that, new mysterious meta gel or meta material in a laboratory, Ralph. Though this one, coffee and olive oil, could save your life. So very, very cool. Ladies and gentlemen, the music means that we are done. This was a very, very good segment. Ralph, thank you so much for bringing us these stories. And ladies and gentlemen, every Friday, if you want to check out more, check us out here on Computer America, or of course, head on over to Ralph's website where we will have a link in the show notes. Until next time, have a great one. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.